We are now being live streamed and I'm going to start.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our City Association Board of Directors meeting, special meeting for May 11th, 2023. And I would like to call the meeting to order at 7:24 p.m. And we will start with roll call, please.
Ann Bybee. Present. Hung Wei. Here. Marie Blankley. Or Dion Brocco. Sally Meadows. Here. Stanley Mock. Rob Rennie.
Here.
Carmen Montano. Or Evelyn Shaw. She left early. Javed Elahi.
Alternate Brian Mekachuk.
Mark Turner.
Here.
Margaret Abekoga.
Here.
Lydia Ku. Here. Sergio Jimenez.
Here.
Kathy Watanabe. Here. Tina Walia. Here. Larry Klein.
Present.
We have 13, so we have 10.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if we could squeeze in so Stan can come up.
I think this is Matthews.
Oh.
He's in the other room.
Somebody can
Thank you. As always, I cannot run, I cannot hide.
Even though you're all in black. Okay, now we are complete. We will go to our consent agenda. We have items 1A through 1C. Is there anyone who would like to pull an item or comment on an item? Yes.
I don't want to pull, but I want to make comment.
Yes.
It is a very friendly nomination for me to do the secretary treasurer's job, but Tina's being busy and she has some other more important.
Thank you for the friendly swap. Really appreciate that.
Yes, yes, thank you. I appreciate the collaboration, Tina. Yes,
Madam President, we need to pull the March minutes because we were not prepared.
so we will pull the March minutes and bring it back to our next meeting. Any public members online? Anyone from the public here wishing to speak on the consent item? Let's see any. I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for motion and just second.
Move to approve.
I'm sorry, by
Turner and Jimenez. Okay. Any other discussion? If not, we need a roll call vote on this.
motion to approve the consent agenda with the discussed changes was made by Turner, seconded by Jimenez. Sunnyvale,
Yes.
sorry, just play by CDs.
Fine.
Saratoga,
Yes.
Santa Clara,
Yes.
San Jose,
Yes.
Palo Alto,
Yes.
Mountain View,
Yes.
Morgan Hill,
Yes.
Monte Sereno,
Aye.
Milpitas, not here, Los Gatos,
Aye.
Los Altos Hills,
Yes,
Los Altos, yes. Gilroy, not here, Cupertino,
Yes.
Campbell,
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 0 absent.
Actually.
One
want to
absent.
be one,
Oh,
two.
Two absences, right? Yeah, sorry, 2 absences.
Can I ask legal counsel, do we need to do roll call votes since we don't have any?
Everybody's here. and
Okay, great. So we'll do voice votes for the rest of the items. Okay, thank you. We go to item 2, my update. Just wanted to look ahead in August, at our August meeting, we have scheduled the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority to come to our meeting, and perhaps Vice President Fliger could help too with this. So as you have probably heard, or you've heard, there is the BAFA, which is was created by special legislation, has been tasked to come up with a funding mechanism for affordable housing in the 9 Bay Area counties. So BAFA is a part of the MTC ABAG combined body. And we have been actually, both Vice President Feiger and I serve on the BAFA committee from MTC side and then from ABAG side. But we've been discussing this measure and it's they're looking at going out for the measure in 2024, most likely November. And it's time for BAFA to start the public presentation, public outreach. And we felt it was important that we here in Santa Clara County get to hear what the plans are, and also for the BAFA folks to hear from all of our cities. There's some issues, mainly, well, one, the positive is they're looking at $10 to $15 billion of revenue through a bond measure. But there's some details that still need to be worked out. So we thought it would be important for them to come to our board as quickly as possible. So we have that scheduled for August. So just wanted you all to know, please let your colleagues know if they're interested in hearing about the measure as well. And we'll plan for hopefully an hour at least for their presentation and feedback. And if needed, we'll bring them back. But we just wanted to get that going as soon as possible. So that was mainly it. Any questions? Any comments from the public in the room, online? All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 3. We are fortunate this evening to have 2 presentations. Our first is Assistant District Attorney James Gibbons Shapiro, and I have a little bio on him. Mr. Gibbons Shapiro grew up in San Jose, attended Gunderson High School, Yale University, and UCLA Law School. He has worked at the Santa Clara County DA's office for 26 years. He's prosecuted almost every kind of case, and in 2003 won the Felony Trial Attorney of the Year award for his work on the sexual assault team. Currently, he is one of the 6 assistant DAs that manage the trial and other teams in the DA's office. He supervises the family violence team, the crime strategies unit, using data analytics and information sharing to solve more crimes and prosecute them better, the victim services unit, the high-tech crimes team, and the case issuing team that reviews police reports and files criminal cases in court. Part of the crime strategies unit is the gun task force and gun-related intelligence program. He chairs the county's domestic violence death review team and the annual effort to update and revise the county's domestic violence protocol for law enforcement and the child abuse protocol for law enforcement. The DA's office's victim services unit led the work in the immediate aftermath and in the months and years following to support the victims, families, and communities that needed help after both the Garlic Festival mass shooting in 2019 and the VTA mass shooting in 2021. And Mr. Gibbons Shapiro is here to talk about the Santa Clara County Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, and I will ask you to introduce your partner as well. This is one of our priorities is gun safety, and so we're very delighted to welcome you to join us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having us. Actually, we're going to kick it off with Deputy County Executive Casey Halcone. So I'll just say a few words about Casey Halcone. So she's a Deputy County Executive in the County Executive's office, and she supervises most of the county departments that relate to public safety and justice. Before that, she was the Director of Victim Services at the DA's office. And when you heard in my bio that DA Victim Services led the effort in the aftermath of the Garlic Festival shooting and after the VTA shooting, Casey Halcone led the effort in the aftermath of the VTA shooting and the Garlic Festival shooting, both in the immediate hours and days after both shootings, but actually also for the months and years that followed for the ongoing support of those communities. She is a dedicated fighter for victims of crime and also a really deep thinker about the strategic ways that we can make our communities better for everyone. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Casey Halcone.
He's also my former boss, so he has to James is a friend and mentor, and I paid him $20 before we got here. So yes, my name is Casey. I am a deputy county executive, and I was the director of victim services, and that's really where I fell in love with criminal justice work. It sounds a little bit strange, but if you love it, it's in your blood, and it's something you want to dedicate your life to. So when I left the DA's office to join the CEO's office, I took over the public safety and justice portfolio. That also includes fire. So if you need something from county fire, I'm your person. And part of the work that I'm leading in partnership with James and others in the county, including public health, and I understand that you have speakers from public health here tonight, is a holistic approach to gun violence intervention services and also prevention. So James is going to talk about the task force, which is a super important part of how we are leading this work in the county. And I'm going to talk a little bit about resiliency and recovery, and both are necessary. So when we think about gun violence, we have to think about how do we intervene when it's occurred and how do we stop the cycle of it. We also want to think about how we prevent it. And those are largely holistic practices with law enforcement and with public safety and justice partners, including behavioral health and public health. And we also want to think about community resiliency and how we recover in the wake of an incident. So I will leave it to James to talk about kind of the criminal justice and data analytics. But I can tell you is one of the priorities for the county is in working with both. So we want to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. Public safety is one of our charges. But we also want to look at ways we can partner with local jurisdictions. We can partner with our community-based organizations to do what's called violence interruption and also prevention action as well. So we're looking at a couple of different models in the county. We recently just added additional funding to our budget, actually to public health, through their violence prevention programming to do an assessment of programming that's happening already within the county, but also we may be reaching out to our cities as well to better understand what the cities are doing locally and how we can better coordinate those efforts and where we need to fund key strategies that are evidence-based and are working. One of them is something, frankly, the city of San Jose does incredibly well, which is hospital intervention. So sending Catholic Charities and community-based organizations into the hospitals when somebody has been injured. It's a unique time for intervention services, but also our community-based organizations do things that we don't necessarily think of as gun violence prevention, but are incredibly important for the social determinants of health that we know can contribute to gun violence. Healthy communities, parks and rec, cleaning up our cities. How do we do recreation with our kids? Mentoring programs. The county's also looking at a guaranteed basic income pilot for reentry clients so that we can guarantee some stability, economic stability to reduce recidivism. And we're also going to be doing a guaranteed basic income pilot for foster youth as well. So those are some of the more holistic practices the county is hoping to bring forward as evidence-based practices to look at as an adjunct to our law enforcement response. And then what happens when there is an incident? So as James said, and he's not taking enough credit because he was the person I was on the phone with while I was crying at 7 a.m. On May 26th, 2 years ago. So we ran that response together. And so that's something that both he and I have direct experience being with those families that day and seeing really in stark reality, the dangers of gun violence and how destructive it can be. And what we know is that the trauma that not just the survivors and the families experience, but the loved ones, the children, the community at large experiences is significant, and we can interrupt those traumatic cycles. So one of the things James and I did when we were running victim services is in the wake of the Gilroy shooting and the BTA shooting, we opened resiliency centers. And so we successfully drew down grant funding to be able to open up these centers to provide long-term care for those communities and to structure services, very different services, frankly, if you went to the Gilroy Center versus the BTA Center that are focused on what those individual communities needed. But that's not really a long-term model. Every time there's a shooting, it's very expensive and costly to pop up a center. And so we had an idea, which now the county has adopted, of a trauma recovery and resiliency model. And so what that means is the county is now investing in trauma recovery for the community and the county itself. We're hiring a clinical director. So this will be a psychologist with trauma experience who will help the county and our cities and our school boards think about plans, proactive approaches to how to develop response plans in the wake of a shooting, and then also be boots on the ground and available if, God forbid, there is one, to help advise our local jurisdictions on how to support their community. So an example of that is there was it ended up not being an active shooting, thank goodness, but there was a threat at West Valley College, and they were on lockdown and they were traumatized. Nobody was hurt, but as you can imagine, it left a significant impact. And so the Victim Services Unit and the current director, Tasha Wiggins, and myself worked with that community to help them structure services. We've continued to support them as they're thinking about counseling and the needs of their staff and faculty. So we've sort of come in to assist. We don't try to take over. We just want to be an adjunct too, with some subject matter expertise for people who've unfortunately had to do this a few times. So that's just my portion of the presentation. James has a lot more to say, but I basically wrote his coattails in so that I could talk with all of you a little bit about the county plan more broadly speaking, and also make sure that I told you about the trauma work, because it's very possible that I'm going to be asking to come to your cities and talk with you a little bit about it. I've done that in Sunnyvale. I've also done that for the city of Palo Alto. I've been meeting with the chiefs of chiefs for the fire department. I'm hoping to meet with the chief of police as well, and to think about how we can work together and have plans, be proactive, unfortunately, to prevent some of the more serious side effects of mass violence and casualties in our community. I will turn that over to James.
Thank you so much. Shally, I just tried to share my screen and it says it is disabled for me. So
Well, on here, it says that.
I'm also happy to just talk, but I think you might enjoy seeing some charts, graphs, and photos of guns.
Why don't you start talking and I'll work on this?
Stop making my coat. Oh, something's happening. Something's happening. All right, I think we just got disabled again. I was just about to share and then, all
Okay, try it again now.
right, hold on. There we go. Oh, there we go. Things are happening now. So I can. All right, so I'm Assistant District Attorney at the DA's office. You already heard a long introduction about me. I wanted to talk to you first about the problem of the increase in violent crime in all of our communities, the increase specifically in aggravated assaults. So these are assaults that result in a serious injury or assaults with a weapon, and an important subportion of aggravated assaults, which is aggravated assaults with a firearm. These charts, by the way, come from a report that the DA's office has on its website. It's the Crime Strategies Unit Crime in Santa Clara County report for 2022. It shows through 2021 data, and it shows this data countywide, but it actually also breaks it down for every city. So I know you all get reports from your police departments about crime in your city, but what's an interesting read, if you look at this report, is that then you can then compare your city to other cities in the county and look at the countywide data and then compare city to city. But the overall story in the county is that over the last 10 years in Santa Clara County, in California, and largely in the United States, while there has been either flat or a reduction in overall crime rates, there has been an increase in violent crime, and especially violent crimes with guns. This chart is a couple years old, but it basically is talking about how guns, either used in suicides or in crimes or in all sorts of different ways, unintentional shootings, that there's been an increase in the United States in deaths, injuries, suicides with guns over this time period. So what's happening in Santa Clara County, what's happening in California is not unique to Santa Clara County in California. You all know, because you've heard a lot of reports about how there are disproportionalities in the criminal justice system. And that's true in our county too, where that compared to census data, people who perpetrate gun crimes are disproportionately Latino compared to census data, disproportionately high African-American compared to census data. But this chart shows that this is also true for the victims of gun crimes. So the victims of gun crime in our county are dramatically disproportionately Latino, dramatically compared to their census data, disproportionately African American, under disproportionately low for Asian Americans and for Caucasian or white Americans. And this data actually is just from 2015. Our friends from Public Health have more current data on this that basically says the same thing from the very comprehensive report they did on the costs of gun violence. And if you haven't seen that report, it's worth a read. It's a 55-page report. It might even be longer than that. It's a long report, good report to take a look at, costs of gun violence on the Public Health website. One other measure of the increases in gun violence in our community is submissions of guns to the crime lab. So when police departments, like all of your police departments, arrest somebody who has a gun, they seize that gun and they take that gun to the crime lab to see if their ballistics testing can link it to other shootings. And you can see that over the last 10 years, the submissions of guns that are being seized on the street by your police officers has dramatically increased. And the portion of those guns that are unregistered firearms, that are privately made firearms, often referred to as ghost guns, has also dramatically increased. So that not only has the number of guns increased to the crime lab, but the number of guns that are being manufactured illegally, sold out of someone's garage in Willow Glen. That happened just last year. We busted a gun manufacturing operation in Willow Glen in San Jose, and all over the county. We have gun manufacturing for these unregistered firearms. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you go back one slide, please?
Yeah, sure.
So another way of reading this, and I'm probably reading it wrong, is that there's more enforcement work that's being done. And therefore, if you don't have enough enforcement, you're not going to get the gun submissions. But if you're increasing your enforcement and you've got, that's another way of reading it. And I'm sure that I'm wrong, but.
No, you're not wrong at all. That's absolutely true. So one of the things, so if you were looking at, this is San Jose PD number, this is not countywide number. If you looked at staffing at San Jose PD during this time period, it would be relatively flat, or actually in some periods of this time it went down. So, so it's not that there were many more officers on the street, but it is absolutely true that starting in 2017, there was an increased emphasis in San Jose PD to seize crime guns and to try to link them to shootings. So it's both that there is actually an increase of guns on our street, an increase in privately made unregistered guns, and also in many of your cities and in the city of San Jose, an increased focus on them. And that's really the end of this presentation. Is I'll just say now what my last slide is that California has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. And also they're meaningless unless we have the will to enforce them. So this effort that I'm going to be talking about, this first part is about the problem, but the rest is about the solution that we're enacting here in the county in combination with all of your police departments to focus on enforcing California's tough gun laws in all sorts of ways to reduce gun crime and to prevent gun crime. So you're absolutely right. Did you have another question about that?
No, thank you.
No problem. And I love your pin.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so this is a little bit about progress. So more guns submitted to the crime lab means that more shootings are linked. So if you fire a semi-automatic weapon, a shell casing will be ejected from that gun. And that's like a 9mm handgun is a semi-automatic weapon. An AR-15, illegal in California, is a semi-automatic weapon. You shoot one of those, it ejects a shell casing. Each gun, when you shoot the gun, they're all a little bit different, even if they were manufactured 5 minutes apart. And so the scrapings, the markings on that shell casing are going to be a little bit different gun to gun. And so you can use a computer imaging system both to test fire a gun that you've seized from a crime and then compare it to shell casings at other crime scenes and link those shootings to the gun that you've seized, or to link just shell casings between two unsolved crimes. So this is really important. You might have an unsolved shooting with a bunch of shell casings on the ground and another unsolved shooting with a bunch of shell casings on the ground. And each of those two ones by themselves, you can't solve that crime. But now you put those two together and now you can solve the crime. Or actually even easier, you've arrested somebody with a gun that matches to these two shootings, and now you've not just got the crime that the person was arrested for, but you've linked that person because of his gun to two other shootings. So this is part of a national system called NIBIN, which is the National Ballistics Imaging System. That's not what NIBIN stands for, but whatever. You can see that we've over time, starting in 2017, when we really started leaning into this in the county, we've increased the number of linked shootings. Something you may be familiar with, and if you're not, I'm going to let you know about it. California has a really good red flag law. So you may have heard of red flag laws. Red flag laws are laws where if someone has made a threat to do a shooting or to harm themselves or to harm another person, the police or various other people, but I'll just say police, please to have police, can get a court order to have that person relinquish their guns. And if they do not comply with that order, then they can get a search warrant, another court order to seize those guns even so. So in 2021, in Santa Clara County, with the help of your police departments, we did 145 gun violence restraining orders. So that means that someone was making a threat to shoot a school, a mall, a church, a synagogue. And that may not actually be a prosecutable crime yet, because in California, it's a crime to make a threat to kill a particular person, but it's not quite a crime to say, I'm going to shoot up a school. Oh, it's shocking. It's shocking. There's a bill pending in the legislature that's failed several times before that we're trying to fix that, but that is the state of the law in California. So California passed its law after one of many mass shootings in California, the Isla Vista shooting, which was near UC Santa Barbara. So the shooter in the Isla Vista shooting, it was not a surprise to anybody. He had been making multiple statements to friends, other people he knew, that he was going to do a shooting on campus. And the police knew about this too, but they felt like they could not arrest him because he had not made a threat to kill a particular person. Well, California, like a lot of states, passed a red flag law, which now allows the police to get a court order to temporarily disarm the person until they can get a court hearing, and the court could either return their guns or extend that for a number of years. So this is a hugely important tool to keep our community safe. I view these 145 gun violence restraining orders we did in 2021 as a suicide, a domestic violence murder, or a mass shooting that was prevented. That's what those 145 orders represent. Suicide, a domestic violence murder, because that's mostly what the threats to kill with a gun are, or a mass shooting that was prevented. It's just amazing prevention work.
I have some questions.
Yeah.
So how often, when you do those, how often do they get their?
Not very often, sometimes,
Yeah,
but not very often. So your city attorneys, and this is going to be related to my ask at the end, your city attorneys appear at those court hearings. We, the DA's office, have periodically provided training for your city attorneys on how to do those. Because these cases mostly start with police departments calling the DA's office, and then we help them get the gun violence restraining order. And then at the follow-up court hearing, it's your city attorney or county council, if it's Cupertino or an unincorporated area, appears at those court hearings. And most of the time, the city attorney or county council is recommending to the judge, these guns should not be returned to this person. You should extend this order for a year, 2 years, some amount of time. And most of our judges say, that sounds good to me. The instances where they've been returned are often situations where the city attorney or county council feel like this was a suicidal person, it was an emergent threat, but we feel like maybe now we're going to postpone this hearing a couple months. Okay, now this person is more together, it's okay to return their guns. But that is the exception rather than the rule. Great question.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was just, so those restraining orders, are they only for registered guns?
They're for any gun. They're for any gun.
Right, but how do they know that the person has a gun?
Yeah, so the way these get reported most is someone calls 911 terrified because their loved one has threatened to kill them, or is threatening to kill themselves, or has said, I'm going to shoot up a school, a mall, a church, a synagogue. And then the police will respond and try to figure out what the situation is. And then the next thing is they're calling the DA's office, we need to get a gun violence restraining order. And they may do that also, even if they're arresting the person for a crime, because they want to make sure that if the person makes bail and gets out of jail, that they've also made sure that they've ordered the person not to have guns. And also this order will prevent them from purchasing guns lawfully. So now the police are on scene. They've gotten a gun violence restraining order that they can get very quickly. There's on-call judges 24/7, 365 for search warrants and gun violence restraining orders and other things. So they quickly get their gun violence restraining order, and then they say, sir, we have information that you have a gun, please give us your gun. And he says, no. So they're like, okay, judge, we need a search warrant now to go into this house and search it for guns and seize the guns. And that takes, they'll freeze the house. So that takes another step, but then they go in and they take the guns. And so that's the way that process works. And so it happens with if they have knowledge that from the 911 caller that there's a gun, it's not, they're not a follow-up question is it a registered gun? It's whatever kind of gun.
Thank you.
No problem.
But James, what if they don't turn over all their guns? Because the police officers, please turn in your guns.
Yeah, that's right.
They give you like 3 out of their 4 guns.
That's right. That's right. So
Then what
the
happens?
communication with the person who made the report is very important because they're not just asking this person, they're saying, how many guns does this person have? Where did this person have guns? And sometimes they will go to the place ready to go, pre-drafted, both the gun violence restraining order and the search warrant so that they can have it ready to go immediately. These are not easy situations for the police. I want to emphasize that this is a potentially very dangerous situation for the police. So they do not go out with one officer to knock on the door. They will respond quickly, but usually with a team of officers with the plan both to secure the house and then to be ready for a potential shooting that might happen as they arrive. Because remember, this person, what do we know about this person? They are armed and they have made a threat to use the gun to kill. So knowing that's the situation your police officers are responding to. Should I go on? All
Please,
right.
yes.
It's a
All
lot
right.
to take in.
It is a lot to take in, and I'm talking fast. We've been successful. So sometimes when we go to these scenes, we find not just guns that the person is holding, but also that they're manufacturing guns. So why are people manufacturing guns or also importing guns illegally from Nevada or Arizona? There's a variety of reasons. From Nevada and Arizona, they will sell you an AR-15 that you're not allowed to have in California. So there's an illegal gun trade of AR-15s flowing from Nevada and Arizona into our county and other places in California. But in addition to that, the reason why somebody wouldn't themselves just go to Nevada and Arizona and buy it is because they're prohibited from buying handguns. So who's prohibited from buying a handgun? A felon. Anyone convicted of a felony is prohibited from having a handgun. If you're the subject of a domestic violence restraining order, that order says you're not allowed to possess handguns. If you've been committed to a mental institution for more than 3 days, you are prohibited for a period of time not owning a handgun. So there's various categories of people who are prohibited from having handguns. And all of these people can't go to a gun dealer because actually our gun dealers in Santa Clara County and the Bay Area are actually really good about doing these checks. They will not sell you a gun if you're prohibited from having a gun. So you can't go to the gun dealer. You got to go to somebody's garage who's selling an illegally imported gun or manufacturing the gun themselves. In a gun manufacturing operation, you can see these guns that are being manufactured. You may think about gun manufacturing as what's popular on TV is people making 3D printed guns out of plastic, which also is a thing. But that is not the main thing. The main thing is people buying parts of guns or guns that are almost completely assembled and just doing that final assembly to make a final gun, which is, by the way, a ghost gun. That's an unregistered gun. So this is one of many success stories. So our team is working with your police agencies. We are enforcing gun violence restraining orders. We are enforcing domestic violence restraining orders where someone's had a prohibition to have gun. And then we're looking, or what else is happening? Or we're looking upstream from that. Where did the person get the gun? All right, so we created a gun task force in Santa Clara County. So the gun task force is led there's three parts of the gun task force. Data analytics, we've got dedicated data analysts within the DA's office. Law enforcement, we've got a team led by a lieutenant in the DA's office Bureau of Investigations and joined by the Sheriff's Office, San Jose PD, ATF, Homeland Security Investigations, that's not ICE investigations, that's Homeland Security Investigations, and other partners. I'll just say, other partners do not yet include all of your cities having sent an officer to the gun task force, and we welcome that. So that's going to be my first ask to all of you, is that if your city's police department has not yet sent an officer, either full or part-time, to participate in the gun task force, we'd ask that you consider raising that with your chief of police or inviting me or someone else to come make a presentation about it, about why that's a good idea and will make your community safer.
Is that a dedicated 40-hour a work week position of an officer, or is it?
Ideally, it's a dedicated position, but it can also be a part-time position. We will take somebody a couple days a week. And the other thing that's related to that is we have a weekly meeting at the DA's office. It's also on Zoom on Wednesday mornings at 9:30, the Gun-Related Intelligence Program meeting, where we go over every gun-related incident in the county and we prioritize them by most serious to least serious. We have a document that we share with all the law enforcement agencies that attend. If your law enforcement agencies are not yet attending, that's a really important meeting, because you not only get information about the latest trends in what's going on this week on gun violence, but you also are able to coordinate with the other law enforcement agencies. Oh, we had a shooting like that in our community and you did too. Let's touch base and solve this together.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes, go ahead.
So it doesn't prevent this person to purchase illegal guns after the guns being taken away.
If you're the subject of a gun violence restraining order or domestic violence restraining order, you both have your guns seized and you cannot purchase a new gun. You're entered into the state and national database that will prevent you from purchasing legally a gun.
Yes,
We're
illegal.
not gonna be able to prevent you from going to somebody's garage and purchasing a gun. And that's why it's so important whenever we seize one of these guns to do that next level investigation. Where did this person get that gun? How do we stop that person who's manufacturing in their garage? Or if they're importing it from Arizona, where is the straw purchase happening in Arizona? And how are those guns flowing into Santa Clara County? And how can we interrupt those things? So the task force is thinking about hyper local, like somebody who called 911, my loved one is threatening to shoot a school, and then also expanding out to how do we interrupt the flow of illegal guns and the use of illegal guns in our county.
So that's good to know. The task force doesn't stop just by seizing the guns. It traces where the gun comes from and it goes to deeper.
Absolutely. So
At the
we're
source.
and also working on these linked shooting cases. I was just saying something that's been really great just from the last month or two is how improved our partnership has been with the family courts. So now if the family court issues a domestic violence restraining order, either as part of a divorce or child custody, or just because someone has sought a domestic violence restraining order, the family court judge makes an inquiry and makes a finding about whether guns that this person has either registered or unregistered have been relinquished. And if they haven't been relinquished, what used to happen is the judge would say to the victim or the victim's attorney, here's a piece of paper saying that they have not relinquished their guns. Now what happens instead is that piece of paper gets emailed to the gun task force, and our investigators with the law enforcement agencies, now we're investigating what happened with this, why haven't the guns been relinquished, and now we're going to get the guns. So that's been a huge development. I don't have to talk more about seizures of
I don't know if you're
felons,
getting
gun
this
violence.
impression, but he could talk about.
I
this.
really could talk about this all day. I already talked about gun trafficking and how we also look at when law enforcement is arresting someone in possession of a gun, we're also typically seizing their phone and doing a search warrant to get into their phone. What we're looking for is Instagram posts about guns that are gonna tell us, how did this person get this illegal gun? So we're not gonna ask, we might ask the person, but that's not gonna be effective to ask the person, where did you get this gun? You're not allowed to purchase a gun. Much more effective is, we've got a search warrant into your phone. Now we can see on Instagram where someone was offering to sell you a gun, and now we've got a link to the illegal gun trafficking that's happening.
Do they all post? I mean, they're that stupid.
A lot of illegal gun
Mark,
trafficking
yes.
is happening on Instagram. So it's not the only way that illegal gun trafficking is happening, but it would be stupid of us not to look, given how much Instagram is being used. There was a guy who was a very prolific gun trafficker in our county until he was taken into custody last year. And he was, the law enforcement nicknamed him Harry Potter because he dressed like a nerd. He had nerdly glasses. He drove a Prius, and he would say, like, I'm trying to look like someone you wouldn't think was a gun trafficker. And yet he had a whole operation of importing assault weapons from Arizona and selling them in Santa Clara County. He's now in custody. So this is a link chart that shows the ways we link guns that are seized to unsolved shootings and people and crimes related to that. So I don't need to go into too much more about that. So that's what the crime atlas do. So our gun task force work is shooting prevention work. I've taught a lot about we're arresting people, we're seizing guns, but each one of these efforts, from a gun violence restraining order to following up on a family court order, to actually preventing a felon who has a gun from using that gun, to following it upstream to gun trafficking, all of that is not just enforcement for that person, but it is preventing gun crimes. So I'm proud to say that our county is one of the leaders in the state in thinking about this in a combination of prevention and law enforcement work. And as I said, we need your help. So if you've not yet dedicated an officer to participate in these group meetings of the gun task force, please do that. All right, I have one more ask of you. I already said this, but I'll just leave this up there for you to digest it. Here's the other ask of you. If your city attorney is not up to speed on gun violence restraining orders, please get in contact with me and we will train them up so they will be ready to go on gun violence restraining orders. All of your police departments are up to speed on this. All of your police agencies, our DA's office, a person who's not with me tonight, who also talks a mile a minute like me, Marissa McKim, has personally trained, I think, every police officer in the county about gun violence restraining orders. So that's wonderful. It's the main reason why we increase every year the number of ones we're doing, because law enforcement is seeing this increasingly as an important tool. All right. What questions do you have for me? Go ahead.
As far as getting the red flag law information out there, education for residents, that this is an option. What is the DA's office doing as far as that's concerned? I know that it's kind of, it's the highlight of every, Merck article and all that when it happens, and it's like the crime that's prevented, the tragedy that's prevented.
Yeah.
But are we doing anything beyond, you're having an increase because you're looking at, you have sources already, but just getting that education that this is an option.
Yeah.
And if you're worried, this is something you should be doing.
I'll say not enough. So we need to be doing more. And one of the places that I feel like we especially need to be doing more is in workplaces. So big employers and small employers, but I'll just say big employers. We've had a couple instances in the county where someone working at a large company has found out that someone has been making threats to shoot up the company. And then that person tells another coworker, and they're really upset and worried about it. They might tell their manager. Now they've called HR. We need that person to call 911 so that we can get law enforcement involved and, if appropriate, get a gun violence restraining order and take away those guns. There may not be a crime, actually. That person may or may not be arrested, but we definitely need to disarm that person.
Right.
So this is some outreach we've done to big companies, but we definitely need to do more. And I think it's the same for other organizations. I think we've done an okay job with schools actually. I think we get a fair number of good reports from schools, like the school hears that somebody's threatened to shoot up the school. We hear about that, but we can definitely do more.
As far as doing ballistic checks on guns that are collected, the cost of that, is that borne by the cities or by the DA's office or somewhere else?
Yeah, it's a combo platter. So the crime lab, which is run by the DA's office, is funded in part by the county general fund. So I want to say maybe like 40%, and 60% by the police agencies that are submitting things to the crime lab. That's almost true. And I throw in another 10% in there to make it 110%. So 10% is also from grant funding. So some of the ways that we have funded the scaling up of the gun task force is by grant funding. So we got a big grant last year from the federal government that went to purchasing some crime lab equipment, some additional crime lab equipment, as well as paying for the salaries of 2 data analysts. So there's some grant money that's part of that too.
And just wondering, because I know a lot of cities aren't submitting fingerprint because the cost, the cost and payback isn't really there. And I know, Sunnyvale is probably, I think next to San Jose, I think we submit the most, but I know that it dramatically drops off across the county. And a lot of that has to do with, it's like, well, there's the cost and then what's the payback? And, and I just wondered how ballistics was being done.
Yeah.
And then finally,
Can I respond to
sure.
the payback?
Yeah.
There's sometimes a challenge of police agencies submitting things to the crime lab, then getting results back, and then not quite knowing what to do with that result. So one of the things that we've tried to improve in the gun area, and also, by the way, in the DNA area, is have an extra filter before it goes to the police department saying, hey, you got this weird report from the crime lab. This is what it means. Here's what you should be doing with it to try to link this thing together. And then for guns, we code these for law enforcement agencies and internally, green, yellow, red. Green means that this is a hot tip. We just solved your crime. Go get that. Yellow, this is a good tip. You need to do a little bit more and now you've solved your crime too. Red, like this tip is not that good. So you can make this your last priority. Focus on this green tip, please.
And lastly, one of the things that we did last year was Project Child Safe, and it's kind of related to guns. It's giving away free gun locks, and I think San Jose and the county's doing that.
Yeah.
But I'd say there's been no wider push to say that that's available. And where the money's coming from is kind of tied to some of the gun companies. But that being said, if the gun locks, from a suicide standpoint, from an accidental shooting, kind of separate from the red flag laws, but you should be locking your guns away. And here's a gun lock to make sure that you're complying with law.
It's absolutely the case. And I think that one of the things that we can do a better job in our community writ large is encouraging gun law. How do we encourage gun owners to be safer with their guns? And I don't think that while it's good to be giving away these things, I don't think the money is the real barrier to having a gun lock. I think there's a culture shift we need to nudge, to use this term you've probably all heard in governments. We have to figure out ways to nudge gun owners towards safer storage of their guns. Because I think the culture right now is, I need to have my gun ready at all times. And if I have a 10-second delay in having my gun ready because I've got a gun lock on it, then I'm not ready. And we need to try to change that narrative to a safety narrative. And I think that's a combination of what we need to be doing with gun locks, in my opinion.
Thank you.
You mentioned a bill or some legislation regarding these red flag laws. I received a call from someone in our community that threatened not just gun violence, but bloodshed, a bloodbath in our community. So he was arrested, but 30 days later, he's been released back into our community. So it's quite concerning. And I actually called our assembly member and asked if there was something we could do. If there's a bill that is currently underway or somehow moving through the process, maybe we can jump onto that.
Yeah, the bill that's moving through the process has to do with school shootings in particular. And it's trying to say that if you made a threat to shoot a school, even though you haven't threatened a particular person at the school,
Yeah.
that is a crime. This has failed in the legislature several times before, but we're making a new shot by focusing on schools this year. So read my language about the shot.
Yeah, well, then I'd like to work with our assembly members to try to expand that, because, that's the thing, to get a threat like that. And to think, man, our community is now in jeopardy,
Yeah.
and he's walking around, and he's a former Hell's Angel. So it's not as though he doesn't have access to weapons. So, yeah, it's concerning.
I'm sorry that that's happening.
That's what us mayors do.
What is the name of that number of that legislation?
I'll have to email it to you because I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, go ahead. So our city has tried to implement gun safety ordinances. We're trying to do one a year. Hopefully we can speed that up. But what do you think about all of our cities having similar local ordinances, like safe storage? Do you think that's effective or not really? Or-
I think it is effective because it says to the community that the city thinks this is important, and you're gonna get some compliance when people feel that way. So I think that's a good idea. I think that we can't attack this problem only one way. We have to attack it as many different ways as we can.
So that was my question. I'm actually hoping to work with the West Valley cities to have the same safe storage gun ordinance passed at the same time. So first it saves staff research time, and also it gives the community, maybe we can expand it to other cities that give the community a message saying that, hey, this is something we value, and then we all pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So I was just talking to all the city managers and mayors of West Valley cities if they're interested in doing it together.
We have gun safety storage ordinance that was about 1.5 to 2 years ago, and we just did gun prohibition in sensitive spaces, which is essentially all government property. And the newspaper didn't write a single article about that because they wanted to focus on the other clickbait topics.
Yeah.
So not a single article about guns prohibited in sensitive spaces.
But if
Right? Did nothing.
But if 10 cities are doing it at the same time, maybe they'll.
No, I know. I'm just saying that it's just the mindset in our culture is just.
Do one last.
So the nation of Finland has a 50% gun ownership rate, and their rates of accidental firing or the number of people that get shot there because of gun violence is very low. I think that you probably think about this all the time, every single day. What else can we do to make ourselves safer? Because I think that when I first started looking at this, it was one shooting per day on average. And now it's gone up to like 3. And I'm afraid, I'm really afraid. Is there something else going on in the nation that we really don't know about? Something else that we can address? Because we're addressing something, but I think that the primary cause might be,
It's
I don't
important
know.
mental health too. And so that's, mental health and see something, say something. But if somebody is struggling, the profiles of our mass shooters, by the way, there's a common profile. And so it's something that there's been research on. There's a tie between mass shooting, for instance, and violence against women. And it tends again to be a common profile. And so there's certainly something amiss. And I think that's why you're seeing more significant investment in behavioral health and supportive services. The county's looking to invest in wellness centers in our local schools for a big portion of that reason being we want to be able to be in the schools to help our children when they need it. Because we would like to, again, this is prevention, right? Having well people and having people who feel well and know where to go for resources, you can help prevent some of particularly mass shootings, I think.
I completely agree. And I'll say that if you think about mass shootings that you've read about recently and around the country, I'm so sorry that we've gone over time.
No, it's okay.
I'm gonna take one more
Sorry to
question
have
after
asked
this.
No.
I'll just try to answer this.
I just generally smile a lot.
All right, it's not giving me the evil smile. Okay. Think about mass shootings you've heard about recently and in the last few years, you'll see that a lot of these mass shootings are suicides where the person is also taking out a lot of other people. Either the person has killed themselves or they provoked as part of it a shootout with the police, or they have no exit plan. Like the plan is to do shooting. The plan also is to die themselves in the mass shooting. So it's a suicide where they're also taking out a lot of people. And if you think about mass shootings or a large number of mass shootings in this way, then you can think about what efforts you're making about disarming people who are threatening to kill themselves. Like not everyone who's threatening to kill themselves is going to do a mass shooting, but a lot of mass shootings are done by people who are doing it as a suicide-related event.
I was thinking about anger management because I'm sort of thinking that people get really mad. They go out there and do stupid things. So I don't know how much money is being put into that at this point in time.
Yeah, I would say that shootings increase in California, in San Jose, in Santa Clara County, in the United States in the summer and in December. What's happening in the summer and December? People are out late, they're having a drink, they're having some other substance. So if we're talking beyond mass shootings, that the interrelationship between alcohol, guns, young people, all those things together, and you add in domestic violence, which is a big subcategory of gun violence in America and in our county. Those are all things that if you work on one of those things, we're also preventing gun violence.
I'm gonna take one last question, and if you would leave your emails or contact, then please reach out later, but we have another presentation, so I'm so sorry.
They're like, when is he gonna show up?
There's an action that's so
Excited to hear your presentation. We're like, going.
So, Member Walia.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you, for your presentation. I'll be brief in the interest of time. Firstly, if you could also, in addition to your email contact information, send the link through Shally for the report presentation 1, 2, 3.
Absolutely.
That would be very helpful rather than in front of us trying to find the right report. Secondly, I do want to touch base with you, Casey, because last year when I was mayor in Saratoga, when the Texas shooting happened in schools, we had to make the judgment call not to get involved in school boards, but the residents, being residents of the city, how I navigated that. Thankfully, my city manager was able to help me find a good way. The biggest gap I found was communication, and everybody was very grateful. The school folks, the administrators, the teachers, and the sheriff's offices, as well as the parents. Emotional angle, nothing has happened there, though the West Valley College that you talked of, Redwood Middle School, a part was also impacted, as you know, way more than I do. So I would like to reach out to you, not take up more time here, but that's one area I want to share in front of everyone. If there is a way that we can all be aware how, as city councils, without interfering into the school jurisdiction, the residents are the parents of those children. How we can all work together to send the right message, the education awareness, the communication.
I'll just say briefly, one of the lessons learned from West Valley was the importance of us having templates available for people who've gone through something like what happened at West Valley. Sacred Heart was also impacted because they're so close, because the communications team, did not expect to have this happen, and then the messaging was clunky. And so that's something that we'll be working on, as well as how do we get information out to people so they have it on hand if God forbid something happens. And then it's consistent language, it's approved language, it's language they've sat with for a while, so they're ready to go.
And clear paths of communication. That was one of the things when I was signing safety plan for one of the schools. I saw that gap, and I have no background in the subject. And I reached out to the chief of police and said, I want you to look at this. This is what I think is missing. Because that's what, if something, God forbid, happens, or even if there is a concern something has happened, you can end up informing the parents. That's not correct.
Thank you so much. Obviously, we can spend more and more time, and we'd love to have you back at some point later. But Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us. Or inviting him. Yes, so I will definitely do that. I did that through the City Managers Association, but I'm happy to follow up with everybody here.
Thank you. All right, we are going to go to our next guest speakers, and there is a tie to this, if I remember correctly. We have Teddy DeLiga, is that right? From the Santa Clara County Department of Public Health, and
Yeah, thank you.
oh, geez, Ellie Thompson. Welcome, if you'd like to join us here.
Yeah, we'll just take their spots.
Great.
We didn't get as far as
So,
There's also move down. Yeah, so you. Don't have to close this part now. Let me just grab my bed.
Healthy Cities dashboard for 2 or 3 years. He's a great person. For asking us any questions.
Welcome, Mr. DeLiga and Ms. Thompson. So quick bio, Teddy DeLiga has worked for the County of Santa Clara Public Health Department for 10 years to support policy and environmental strategies aimed at disease and injury prevention. He currently serves as a manager of the Healthy Cities program and is overseeing the environmental justice update to the county's general plan health element. And Ellie Thompson is a registered dietitian with over 10 years of experience in nutrition and public health. She currently works as the Healthy Cities Planning Specialist for the County of Santa Clara Public Health Department, promoting policy, systems, and environmental changes that support the health of county residents through the Healthy Cities program. And if I remember correctly, the dashboard did include gun violence or gun
We'll
safety.
talk about that today.
Yes, there's our tie-in. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for your patience and please.
Thank you. So yeah, we'll try to keep it relatively brief today, but we are, Ellie and I are both here to share our updates that we've made to the Healthy Cities dashboard, as well as hopefully get your endorsement for a forum that we'll host either virtually or in person, depending on what makes the most sense. So just to give you some background, in case you're not familiar with the Healthy Cities program, Healthy Cities launched in 2016 as a program of the Public Health Department from the Cities Association. So some of you might be familiar already with Healthy Cities. As part of our work, we promote and recognize the progress of your cities in adopting and implementing evidence-based policies and practices that support public health in general. So some key features of this program when we launched it in 2016, we focused at least initially on promoting active transportation opportunities, healthy food and beverage environments, and promoting tobacco-free communities. And then we also looked at least initially on some cross-cutting policy strategies. As part of that work, in addition to sharing dashboards annually, at least for the first 4 years of the program, we also shared model policies and provided assistance to your cities and your staff as it made sense or as it was invited. So beginning in late 2019, we engaged with city and nonprofit partners to assess your priorities as cities, to find out where there might be alignment between your cities and the county, as well as just determine how we can better support you as partners. So we interviewed city elected officials and their staff, as well as other partners. And generally, the feedback that we got from everyone was that the program is appreciated, that everyone was in favor of adding policies specifically focused on climate change and violence prevention. There was general support for modifying the format of our dashboard there was support or at least a request for more real-time recognition of cities rather than just following up at the end of the year and sharing the progress that cities have made, ideally sharing when cities do achieve or adopt different policies. And then there's also generally appreciation for access to resources by model policies. Cities generally like having access to model policies. So we had initiated these conversations in late 2019, and then of course 2020 delayed things quite a bit. So we weren't able to formally update the dashboard until early 2022. So some of you may be familiar with the updated dashboard. It's no longer paper-based, but that lives in this format, the Power BI platform. So it's a little bit more interactive. This is just the high-level first view of the dashboard, which gives you a sense of where cities are adopting policies across each of the now 9 categories that we are evaluating ourselves in the county, as well as each of our cities against. The categories include safe places for active transportation, climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies, food access, reduced exposure to secondhand smoke, eliminating youth access to tobacco, violence prevention and response, advancing racial equity in government, and housing in the built environment. And so this hopefully helps you see where your city is at in terms of its status against these 9 categories, and hopefully also encourages additional adoption of stronger policies related to these categories. Yes.
Quick question. There are blanks in here.
Yep.
Why are there blanks?
So the cities are awarded medals based on set criteria. So depending on whether or not a city has achieved the bronze level.
So let me say it differently.
Yes.
Are the blanks non-participation? They didn't even do anything?
So the blanks don't necessarily indicate a city hasn't adopted a policy in a given category. It just means the city has adopted a policy that does not quite meet the criteria that we're encouraging.
Get with it, Brian.
Pardon?
Get with it.
I'm looking like we're at the bottom of the pack here, and I'm like, this is not good.
There are some instances also where cities may have passed based on our criteria, like a mid policy in sort of the bronze, silver, gold level tiers, but not the bronze level, like usually gimme policy, like usually not as hard to do. So that could also be why. It's not necessarily that nothing has happened in that category, but the basic of getting to bronze at least hasn't.
So if we show you one of our awards, you can change our color of the circle.
So yeah.
I'm teasing. I'm kind of teasing, but.
Not
really.
Yeah.
But not really.
So because we transitioned to this new format, in theory, as cities adopt new policies that meet the criteria, we should be able to update the dashboard to recognize you immediately for adopting charter.
So if you go to this later and you say, you think that there is something, please reach out to us.
We are frequently wrong, even though we try to do our best and.
It must be hard, yeah.
Yes. So yeah,
Spencer, how often do you update this? Like, does the city have to wait till the end of the year before
No.
we get it? No.
Yeah.
The moment we've reviewed it and said, yes, we agree, you've met our criteria, we update it.
And I suppose you have your criteria accessible, so we could look at what the criteria.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
So all of the dashboard is available and accessible on the public health website. The address above there, sccphd.org/healthy cities. If you click on the top right button there that says go to policies, that'll provide you, yes, more detail on each of the 9 categories. So if you click within any of the 9 categories, that'll provide you additional detail as to whether or not your city has adopted a policy within a given category, if it meets the criteria or if it doesn't meet the criteria, or if your city has prioritized working on a given policy and you've communicated that to us, then we can also indicate that your city is working on something even if it hasn't yet achieved a given goal. And then in some cases, some cities may not have a need for a certain policy. If they don't, for example, have tobacco retailers, then they wouldn't necessarily need a tobacco retail license. And so one of your questions was how do, again, we evaluate or provide information on how cities achieve a stronger environmental category. And so within the same webpage, we also explain how a city can earn a bronze, silver, gold medal in each of those 9 categories. So not to drive traffic to our website, but I encourage you to check out the webpage more. If you do have questions for us, you're welcome to reach out to us. Yeah. But this is definitely a work in progress. I think it's an improvement from what it was in 2016 when we first launched the program. The dashboards weren't very accessible. We were just releasing them once a year, largely through email. So your residents, your constituents, they weren't able to access those data. And we weren't able to update them until the end of the year. Now with this new platform, at the very least, if your city does adopt a new policy or has an interest in a policy in any of the categories, we can work with you to update the dashboard or work with your staff on policies that would meet our criteria. So again, this is a work in progress. I know James talked quite a bit about gun violence as a category. Within that category of the dashboard, we do encourage cities to adopt safe storage of firearms policies. We do encourage cities to adopt suicide prevention policies and put funding towards implementing those policies. And then we also encourage cities to adopt policies to intervene in crisis situations without uniformed cops or police on duty, so that we can de-escalate certain situations that might not necessitate a police officer there. In addition to that, we also encourage cities to adopt policies that hopefully at least address the root causes of health disparities or the social determinants of health. So we are encouraging cities, of course, to adopt policies that encourage affordable housing, that address environments that might promote violence or promote bad health outcomes. So again, as this is a work in progress, we are anticipating we'll be updating the dashboard later this year with policies that focus on preventing cannabis access among youth, preventing alcohol access among underage populations, and we'll, of course, be receptive to any suggestions you might have for other policies. But with that, I'll talk a little bit more about overlap.
So on our dashboard, we understand that you all have prioritized sustainability and gun safety as your top priorities to address amongst the cities. And so we actually have 3 categories on our dashboard that very closely align with these, although as Teddy said, like, especially with gun safety, really like almost all of our categories probably relate to it in some way through the social determinants of health, but very strictly, there's like 3 that definitely relate very closely to these 3. So I'll go over that in the next slides. So with our violence prevention and response category, we have 3 policies within that. All of them definitely relate to gun safety in some way, but the first policy of safe storage of firearms very closely relates to gun safety. But we also encourage cities to pass suicide prevention policies, as well as have community-based response programs to de-escalate emergencies where possible without the use of law enforcement or at least uniformed police officers. We might add some additional policies to this category based on the cost of gun violence report that was mentioned previously. And we're actually going to include a link to that in the information that you'll get after this meeting.
I have a soft copy of it that I'll
Yeah,
forward to everybody.
And then we also support the adoption of community-based, this isn't on our dashboard, but just broadly. We have a team that's like really ramping up their violence prevention, specifically gun violence prevention work. So we're supporting the adoption of community-based violence intervention programs such as those promoted by Everytown for Gun Safety. There'll be a link to that as well as broad-reaching prevention strategies that address the social conditions leading to violence, such as those highlighted in Prevention Institute's Community Safety Real Life Report. And both of those will be provided as well after. Related to sustainability, we have two categories that are very close to that. So we have climate change mitigation, and cities can earn checks on our dashboard as well as medals depending on which policies are passed based on our criteria. For transportation demand management programs or policies, having building reach codes to eliminate the use of natural gas in new construction, as well as having climate action plans with specific strategies to address racial inequities in the jurisdiction. We also have a climate change adaptation category where cities can pass local hazard mitigation plans, have policies to engage residents in establishing climate resilience hubs, as well as pass urban forestry plans to maintain and increase tree canopy.
Just on that last point, the tree canopy, I believe that Los Altos Hills was changing some things to make it easier, and Monte Sereno to make it easier to remove a tree. Like this past winter has been unbelievable in Monte Sereno, for example, with the trees that are coming down and the eucalyptus trees that are incredible. Anyways,
Are you worried about like those like infringing on the ability to have more trees, or because it's making it easier to remove them, or?
Yeah, like increased tree canopy, like we've got a resident that took out 2 giant eucalyptus trees with huge canopies.
Yeah.
Because they would have crushed his house.
Yeah.
He paid $28,000 to take those 2 trees out.
Yeah.
So I got a little problem with that third.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something for us to consider, especially as it, as climate change is here now. We've seen it with the many large rain events that we've had. And I don't know if maybe there might be something in urban forestry plans that could address the fact that maybe you don't want the giant trees to be in people's yards, but you want them to be like away from structures, but still in your city to help provide shade and reduce like temperature in the city.
Well, we don't do a good job with the right kind of trees either. Right. Just plant non-native to that spot,
or like really small trees that don't really do much to
or
provide
they're all under
shade
the
and-
power lines, or but that's a whole separate topic. So.
Although it can't be just focused on what happened in the storms, the trees, it does have to also remind people that there is a benefit to the trees where they do carbon sequestration, they produce the oxygen and fresh air. So I think that component cannot be left out if there's 2 sides to everything.
Yeah. So related to all of those categories and the alignment with your priorities, we want to host a forum mid-fall, likely sometime in October, to provide information and technical assistance on policies that address both climate change mitigation and adaptation, as well as gun safety. And tentatively, we may have some funding that we can give to cities related to this event, but it's tentative at this point. So more details to come on that later as we finalize the details of the event. But we're actually requesting an endorsement from the Cities Association Board of Directors for this fall event. I guess we're requesting 3 things. An endorsement of the fall event, whether or not you think you all or your colleagues in your various cities would attend such an event, as well as in the climate change category specifically, if there are certain things from the dashboard that you want to know more about, want technical assistance on, related to the fall forum, we could potentially tailor that information to be what you all are interested in learning or potentially working on in your cities and you want technical assistance for. So, yeah.
So on the gas ban,
Yeah.
how are you guys addressing that with what the Ninth Circuit Court came out? Is it a wait and watch kind of case?
Yeah, if we're not,
So,
if there have been updates in what cities are permitted to allow. Yes,
I'm not actually sure, but
Yeah,
we'll look into it.
yes.
The
There's-
2 second on that is it's in Berkeley, and basically they were prohibiting commercial restaurants from with new construction with having natural gas, and they said that doesn't work, and there's some legal terms to it, but that's what you're referring to.
Right, it's just
Yeah.
new construction. I don't even know if they were just targeting restaurants.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it's-
new construction.
It's restaurants.
Our city has, it's all new construction.
New
It's all-
construction. It was a restaurant association.
Yeah, okay, sorry,
Yeah,
yes.
Right, right.
And I know like in reading most of the reach code policies, like most cities have, if restaurants can tell us that we really can't operate our business without these, then, you know, we'll give an exception, and we haven't like knocked cities for that, you know, as long as it applies to all new construction and like the restaurants have to make their case, then we consider that having passed reach codes that meet our criteria, so.
The difference is that most cities are approaching it through their building codes. And that's, I think that's okay, or it's in the gray, but Berkeley did it outside of that. So,
But I think Morgan Hill has a gas ban. Nobody else has a gas ban, so you have the biggest problem.
Yeah, to me, yeah, I agree. So they call it a reach.
Yeah.
Well, we applaud your forward thinking, because we think that's good.
So you're asking us, and I'm not sure if we're able to vote this. So
That's
we're not
okay.
able to- So, but
We just know last time we had a similar thing, someone said, oh, let's endorse the event as part of our presentation. So, oh, well, that's
we can put it on our next meeting's agenda, which will be in August. So will that give you enough time to?
Yeah.
And you probably will have more details about.
Yes.
Okay,
definitely
great.
August one.
We will do that then. All right. One last question, anyone? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh, sure. go
I
ahead.
didn't raise my hand earlier.
Oh.
So you didn't. Any way to find good information on urban forestry, just keeping in mind what is reference to strong schools? They kind of.
Yeah, if you reach out to us, we've got our contact info, and then I'm sure it'll be provided after. We're happy to provide you with some model urban forestry plans. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to, running out of time, we'll move on to item 5, which is our budget. And Shelley, would you like to present that?
Yeah, so I won't go into too much detail because the staff report explains my calculations. I'll just point out in the background section, we voted to keep the dues the same in 23-24 as they were in 22-23. And so therefore, I thought it best to keep the budget relatively the same as well, because we know that amount of money we can operate on. Now, of course, due to the unexpected and unusually high expenses in fiscal year 22, the city's association spent down its reserves, and according to its bylaws, you want 6 to 9 months of reserves in order to make sure the institution are financially stable. However, to do that, it would have required us raising the dues quite a bit. And I didn't want to do that for this coming year. I told you that I wouldn't do that, and I didn't want to go back on that. So therefore, the budget as presented will give us reserves for 4.5 months of operating expenses. So we can just say 4 months. But I think that to build the reserves up to where you want it to be, we'll just be very careful fiscally with, I keep a close eye on the budget, and I think it'll take a couple of years or 2 or 3 years to get to the point that you want it in the bylaws. And just as a reminder, according to the bylaws, we have to approve a budget by June 15th. So that's why I'm presenting it tonight. You all agreed to keep the dues the same, so I did put on the first page of the staff report what the dues will be. And then I did go through a little bit of the explanation of calculations. One thing that I want to call out, it's not really like a huge amount of money, it's not like a make or break us amount of money, but the grant that the REAP grant that we get, the Cities Association does get a very small amount of money to manage the website. So if you go to our website, you'll see there's a section on it for the planning collaborative. We manage that section, and to do those kinds of administrative tasks, we get a little bit of money from it. It's roughly 5% of whatever our consultants bill. So that 5% plus that's what we submit to feedback. And then as you can see, like under labor, there's I just put in like averages of the number of hours per month that we work, some months more, some months less. The one from legal counsel is straight out of the legal services agreement that we voted on and approved. I have not heard that any of our costs for like Adobe or the post office or whatever is gonna go up, so I just copied those over from last year, so I anticipate those going up. You know, hospitality and special events, that's dinners for these meetings, there's only 9 meetings that we buy dinners for. The summer membership event and the December holiday party, in last year's budget, we had budgeted $2,000 to those events. And of course, that means we have to sell tickets to cover the rest. Even with that, it's really tight. It's really hard to, so I just upped it to 3,000. And then the last little bit is revenue minus expenses. That leaves us with $81,000, which is approximately 4.5 months of operating expenses. But last month, Tina, she was still our treasurer. We had a really good meeting with our bookkeeper who assured us that we have enough money right now to finish out this year, pay all our bills, and pay the bills as needed, or the operating expenses for the first few months of the next fiscal year. So, or tonight, so I didn't think there'd be a very minimal fiscal impact. Therefore, tonight you have 2 options. The recommendation is to approve the proposed fiscal year 24 budget. Or if you don't, then you need to change whatever it is. But we do need to have a special meeting before June 15th in order to pass this budget to stay compliant with the bylaws.
Great, thank you. Any questions? I'm gonna then open it up for public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Don't see any and no one online. So I'll bring it back to the board. Any discussion?
So now that our reserve has fallen below the our bylaws, do we have a plan to put it up?
Well, I don't, this is kind of like an interesting transition year because July 1st of this year to June 30th of next year, we're still the same cities association, right? And I don't know what's going to happen like with the JPA, for example. And so I didn't want to make a plan, if that makes sense, for like the next few years to build up those reserves, and we don't really know. So
and that's the next item is about the JPA. So we can talk a little bit more then, and we'll have extensive discussion on that in future meetings.
So, a question. So you said we need a special meeting to approve the budget. Isn't it on the agenda if we approve it tonight?
Yes, so if you decide not to approve
Oh,
it
you said
tonight,
if you decide not to,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
And I just wanted to bring up one thing, and I understand. So this is basically the same fees from a city standpoint that we've paid last year. And what the JPA does as far as what the reserve requirements will be and all that. But all of our cities are going through budget right now, budget process. If if there are any plans to change what the fees are on a per city basis next year, I think it's not something we need to wait until May.
So actually,
right.
and Margaret will probably talk about this, but
From a JPA standpoint.
Yes, so I just briefly, the plan, I was gonna bring it up, but is that we are restarting the JPA process. And the goal, it's very ambitious, admittedly, but the goal would be to try to pass a JPA or create it, or have a majority of the cities pass the concept of a JPA by the end of this year, mainly because this board changes over quite often, quite a bit each year with the mayors changing and whatnot. And we've been at this for a couple of years now, frankly, and with the change of, whenever we change over a year, in a way we have to start over because we have new members. And so ideally, we would like to have this board be able to vote on the JPA adoption, I think by the end of this year before the changeover. So that's the plan.
And that would have the new fee schedule if there was any change.
Yes.
Okay,
So
thank you. Just to confirm. Because when we changed it 3 years ago or 4 years ago in May, many cities had basically draft budgets that were pretty well baked, and any changes at that point became somewhat.
and this was good feedback from the City Managers Association about what their budget process is and when that happens.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
So tonight with this budget, we're basically asking that we have that time to work on the JPA piece and basically have until the beginning of next year to get that, hopefully get some resolution on that. And then we can move forward, and that will include the new dues. And we can talk about the other items later. Any other comments or questions? And if not, I would entertain a motion. Yes.
Afraid to make this comment, but I think that I need to make the comment. That comment is that the cash flow performers do not reflect any inflation. And I know that we do have inflation. So I'm willing just to skip it, just to approve it, or we can have a discussion on it. So I just needed to bring up the point. I don't know what you guys want to say.
I guess I was looking at this again as this is just this next year. So something like CPI could be discussed as we have the JPA discussion. And the JPA there's a JPA document, and subsequently we probably should go through the bylaws and redo the bylaws. And so I think that could be a part of that conversation is my thoughts.
Skip it, go on.
So just a sec, just to pull on that point, these numbers in the proposed budget, I mean, let's face it, other than on the revenues, so you're pretty much hard coding the 281,403 for the membership dues. The aid bag grant, is that in the back?
So the aid bag grant, we're getting it for the rest of this year. And there's.
This fiscal year or this
Sorry,
calendar year?
That's right, good point. This calendar year.
Calendar year, oh, okay, so that's not gonna move the needle very much. But then the big thing is, the executive director and the legal counsel. Are we good with those numbers for the subsequent, for the fiscal year July 1, 2023 to June 30, 2024?
So the numbers that I'm using are based on what we've actually been spending. And so when I look at my time, like how much time it does average about 20 to 25 hours a week. And so I don't anticipate that changing. The clerk IT person, I think we're paying on 30 or 25, I don't remember. 25, right?
Yes.
So I kept that at the same. And that was for, I believe, like 5 hours per week for the IT support.
Yeah, I don't want to drill into the small numbers. I just want to know the big numbers. If we're off by, what's going to move the needle on this? And to get to your point is inflation. Are those big numbers affected by inflation, or are they already anticipating what is going to be next year?
So I guess I'll say we did not include a CPI increase. These are based on the contracts that we currently have with our contracted employees. So, and they're like hourly, for instance, with legal counsel, we have an hourly rate and then a cap on how many hours per month we would.
And I'm not a salaried employee,
No.
like I'm a contractor, so I pay my own taxes. So, and I'm not asking for like a raise or anything like that. I'm just keeping everything.
Okay, you just answered the question.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what the question was.
Okay, if that's the case, do we feel comfortable with all the numbers? I'll make a motion.
But we're taking the building out of the budget. We're not building a cities association fancy new office.
Yeah.
Why not?
It would be hit by inflation. All this stuff is kind of covered, right?
That's the JPA.
Yeah.
And is the cost of forming the JPA included in this budget?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, at least the
so-
legal expenses are, yes.
Okay, so I will make a motion that we approve the budget as proposed. Right.
And there's a second. Okay, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Out this, none of it is.
Yeah. Oh, wait,
Sergio.
he was.
No, Sergio's not.
Quick public
did
comment.
Yes.
Just to encourage, because we have so many new folks, when I was treasurer, I know I worked with the executive director to reach out to some of you, our former council members, to encourage your cities to pay your bills early. Please, once the budget gets approved, send the check to Sean.
Thank you for saying that. 'cause
Vice
that's-
President.
We've talked about it, and Sherry has it in her list.
I won't name
Yeah,
cities,
that
but there were
helps.
some.
Invoices will
helps
go
them to
out
stay.
Yes,
shortly.
that's it by,
Thank you. Item 6, so going back to the JPA discussion, we are, as I mentioned, restarting the process. If you look in your packet, where we left off was that we had received a number of questions from city managers, and they're included in your packet. And we are in the process of answering these questions. Some are legal, so we have our legal counsel working on that. We have Shelley working on the dues with our treasurer. And then Vice President and I are working on the questions about why a JPA, what's the value add? And the plan is that we will work on all this summer. We're dark in July, so that will give us some time, package everything together, and we will present to the city managers at their meeting in hopefully in August. And then we will present to all of you in our August meeting to have a full discussion. And based on where we land there, we will move forward with reaching out to all of your cities with our presentation. I hope that you'll be supportive and you can help us basically reach out to your colleagues to encourage their support as well. If you have questions, happy to, yes.
I would propose that this group have a special, and I believe the legal term is a study session or something like this so that we could spend some time focused on just this and go through it and make a lot, I think we can make a lot of progress in a short amount of time, plus you get buy-in, et cetera. That's one comment. My other one is the city of Monte Sereno is a little gun shy after what we went through recently, last year or whatever, and what the payments could be, et cetera. So from a legal perspective, we don't want to enter into something where we've got more in it than what we've contributed. So if you think of liability, whatever, I'm trying to think of what the term is, we don't want to be liable for more than what we've put in. I can't remember the legal term for that.
Limitation of liability.
Limitation of liability, thank you.
So I think in the study session, we can go over the pros and cons and why.
If you are all
And
willing,
that
we're happy
dovetails
to do that.
into a reserve policy, so that we want to have 4.5 months of cash to sustain the organization. That's a bigger discussion, sorry, I just wanted to put those couple of points out.
I appreciate that, and happy to do a study session. I think you're absolutely right, where this is gonna take some time. So if you are all willing, we are happy to schedule one. So we'll look at doing that, hopefully August, September. Yes.
So since we are still in questions, I'll phrase it more as a question, partly coming from a comment. The question is the dialogue going to continue with the city managers and the city attorneys? Because this document, right, is coming from what Margaret talked about. Last year, this was started with the board members, and board members have changed, and you are the alternate, so we don't know when Javed is coming and when you're coming. Some of the information is not being repeated because that is something we are all familiar with by now. And also a lot of the information is coming from the input from the city managers and the city attorneys.
Yes.
And we have a new attorney here for this team now. So pieces are coming together. And my question is, in terms of the process, it may be helpful, especially before Brian asks that question. Where are we tentatively, not finalized, the engagement with the city managers and the city attorneys? And I will add the comment right there. A big thanks to Shelley for going to the city managers meeting, I believe yesterday, because I think it's important to get their input.
Yes.
Before the city council members can be convinced. You can get one person each here.
Sure.
But you have the other 4 or 6.
Yes, so that is what we learned last year, the importance of engaging both the city managers and the city attorneys. The document that we have drafted was in collaboration with all of your city attorneys. Gary had worked with everyone.
Multiple iterations.
Yes.
And many changes made.
Yes, so Janie will continue that, and then we will continue to attend city manager meetings. And if you have questions that you would like added to this list, please submit them and we will answer as many as we will try to answer them all, but so we will definitely go back to the city managers, and they always meet a day before we do, so we will go to them first, but at the end of the day, it is all of you that makes the final decision. So prioritizing our city councils first. Yes, Vice President.
Vice President Amikoga, and just to follow up, I thought this was where Representative Walia was going, but one of the things we talked about as the executive committee is to encourage the same representative from each council to attend the meetings where we discuss the JPAs. Because we don't want an alternate to come to one meeting and learn something, and then the primary comes and then doesn't have the history or the information we provided before. So as we move forward with this process, we really want to encourage you to have, if you know, it turns out to be the alternate who's going to be the person who attends the JPA meetings and ultimately brings it back to the council, that's fine. But to have one consistent person, so we don't have to always restart, I think that'll be very helpful for the process.
So I'll give you some thoughts on that. If you're gonna do something, then you gotta stick it in a box and get it done. You can't have it dragging on and on and on. You know,
And so with the study session, which was a great idea, and all the meetings we anticipate, we'll get those dates ahead of time so that you or Javed will know the 3 or 4 meetings that we're gonna discuss it. But we're hoping to get this done by the end of the year, so there shouldn't be too many meetings between the period of August and December.
And I mean, I would encourage alternates to attend, but we would like the voting to happen with the primary or whoever is the set voting member from each of your cities. Yes.
So on process wise, because I've never done this, do we need to go and get our city council's approval? So every city has to get that done. And then we have to arrange a council meeting to put agenda. I actually have to do it right
Yes.
now because there's not many meetings.
Yes.
There's so many. Okay.
Well, when do you think the
Yeah.
council decision would be needed,
Right.
like
When would you
November
like the council
or
decision?
October?
So ideally, we would bring it back to this board to vote on, I'd say September, and then ask all of you to have it placed on your council agendas between September, October, and then our November is our last board meeting. We don't
Oh,
meet in
right,
December.
yes, right.
So
Yeah.
ideally, we'd like to ratify it by the last meeting.
Okay, so it's very important. We have the process first so we can bring it back to. So if I go tell my city manager like the first meeting of October to expect this to come to the agenda.
Yes.
It's a delicate dance because we want the endorsement of the city managers.
Right.
So we need to give them these answers and then obviously this group, and then it'll be my job to make sure that we answer all the city attorney's questions. And if we can get all of those things, then yes, possible
So
chance
you
of
are
success.
engaging them.
I haven't, I've talked to Gary and I understand what changes were made, but I haven't. We go back to the city managers and hear their input. I think that we've addressed all of their concerns. I think Gary very clearly addressed all their concerns.
And do you recommend we bring all our city council members to the study session or just the primary alternate?
That would be a fun Brown act.
Yeah.
That would be,
Sounds a
the
little-
noticing would be really.
Oh, wow.
I mean, what I do is usually I listen in to, and then I don't make any, they get zooming and we don't make any recommendations. But we are very inquisitive
So
council.
the study session, you ask questions which imply opinions a lot of times. And
So
I don't think you could get all the people to attend if you, in a perfect world, like that's.
But if I were the primary alternate, I would be very interested in zooming in, listen.
Yes, yes, so
You see me zooming or listen.
definitely would encourage as many of your colleagues to zoom in. I would personally like to have them understand what's going on, because I think that's has been part of the challenge is you are all very aware, but frankly, my colleagues aren't as aware of what's happening, and eventually they will have to vote on it, so. Any other questions, not comments from the public? No one online? Great, thank you very much. Quickly, we'll go to the city selection committee update.
Sure.
You're fine.
So the selection committee met earlier today. We appointed almost every open position that was there. So some of you were here for that, but went fairly smooth. And we made basically the Recycling and Waste Reduction Commission, the Emergency Operation and Area Council. I think that was the main focus. Yeah, so good meeting, quick, we're relatively quick. We finished on time. That's all that matters.
How many people were there?
13,
What time?
13 or 11.
Because
Thank
remember, we
you.
had the tie vote requirement.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, 11.
Because Rob and I weren't there. we were at the VTA meeting and that we could not exit that meeting and he was the chair.
Well, I was a chair, I couldn't leave, but the member from Montecito kept asking questions, so.
Nosy mayor before?
Anything else?
No.
Any questions, comments, public
So there
comment?
was one position we didn't fill, right?
Correct.
Yes, the Gilroy Morgan Hill seat on the recycling
Recycling and waste
reduction.
reduction commission.
And then we'll go to
The ledge and the LAC. So the Legislation Action Committee met earlier today. We basically, for those of you that were here, we started the list of kind of bills that we will be following and kind of giving an updates to all the different cities that are part of that organization, part of this organization. We won't be making basically any advocacy or positions until August. So we'll be meeting in August to kind of have a thorough discussion of those bills, but we'll be doing monthly updates as far as what those bills are, where they stand. And, you know, there were a few cities that didn't have all of their proposed bills. We were shooting for about 2 bills per city. You know, what we found in the past was having a very long list meant that you probably could never get through that, and having kind of paring that down a little bit made it a little bit easier. But you'll be getting an update probably in about a week to the LAC as well as this organization, talking about those bills, because some of the bills in question, cities had already written letters in favor or against at the state level, and just trying to get that information and education out there, raise the awareness of some critical bills that might be affecting our cities in big ways. Any questions?
Any members to the public? No one online. Great, thank you. City Managers Association update, Christina.
Yes, thank you. Christina Gilmore, Assistant to the City Manager, here on behalf of City Manager McCarthy. City Managers Group met yesterday for their monthly meeting, and they received a presentation about a new local government investment pool called CLASS. So maybe ask your city managers more about that. Next month, they plan on talking about homelessness and how each city is tackling homelessness in their community and the various programs that cities are implementing. So thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions,
Can I add a
comments?
comment?
Yes.
Because this investment pool, it's an alternative or a complement to LAIF. And Cities Association uses LAIF, so we do have some money in there. So that might be something we discuss whether we want.
We have an investment policy.
Your reserve.
Yeah. I don't think we do.
Policy.
I don't think we've had that much money, frankly, to invest. Any questions, comments, public comment? No. All right, thank you. We will go on to Executive Director's update.
Just really quickly, our June membership dinner is June 15th. So all of you will be getting, and all of your council members and your city managers will be getting an invitation. And just keep an eye out for that. And thank you for passing the budget tonight. I will be sending out membership dues invoices sometime in June.
That's it. That's it. Any questions or comments? June 15th, 6 p.m. at Los Altos Community Center. The theme is sustainability. And thanks to Silicon Valley Clean Energy for sponsoring us. So actually, we could probably take that 3,000 out of something else. Yes. And there'll be, it sounds fun. There'll be cooking demonstration. I think there's like they'll do dinner at the kitchen, all electric kitchen. And then I think I read dessert trucks, like food trucks for dessert, so.
And they might do a giveaway, like one of those little induction.
Oh, really?
I'm
go.
getting
Be there.
Yes, it'd be more than $50.
That's okay, because
Yeah.
it's a giveaway.
We're-
So please encourage your colleagues to
Los Odos,
community center, which
I
is all
already announced
electric.
it at my last council meeting.
Great, thank you, thank you. Joys and challenges quickly. Does anyone have anything to share?
The Warriors?
No. That's right. Tomorrow.
I know, no, I know, it's tomorrow.
I asked Shelley this earlier. We at the city of Monte Sereno are looking for a facilitator similar to the gentleman that was, I can't remember his name.
Kevin Duggan.
Kevin Duggan, similar to that. So if you've got any ideas, please let me know because we would like to engage someone and he was unable to help us. Timing didn't work and stuff. But that would be really helpful.
So taking a strategy meeting, is that what
No, more how to work together more effectively.
Oh,
Very, like Kevin would have been perfect to do that same session that I attended and a number of city managers attended. That was very, very helpful.
My understanding is that he has names of other people that do
Yes.
those kinds of presentations.
Yeah,
They
we
just can't
did,
agree on
we
it.
had asked him, we had asked Mr. Duggan and he did suggest my other former city manager. We haven't reached out to him, but he said he could share the presentation with our other city manager, Dan Rich. We just need to ask him if he would be up for doing that, but we'll let you know.
Okay, so the city of Monte Sereno would engage that person to come and facilitate a session for us. Thank you.
like a study session or a
Retreat
council
or.
retreat.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Would be nice to have two council cities to retreat together, and learn from each other.
That's a good idea. Okay, we'll talk.
I know. I know you're ready to adjourn.
Yes.
Just lighthearted.
Oh, no, go ahead, talk to us.
What is this about Mountain View having dibs on the city?
I know,
attorneys?
right? What can I
City
say?
Manager, another former city manager. I mean, I don't know what's about Mountain.
What can I say?
Assistant city manager.
With that, well, thank you so much. Thanks for staying a little late. I hope it was an informative evening and please drive home safely. We'll see you next one. Oh, we'll see you at the annual, yes, annual dinner, June 15th.